Okay, good morning and welcome to Just Daf It as part of the greater Yeshiva YouTube. Today's Daf is Nazir Daf Chafe, short day Friday. Let's get right into it. The last line of Chaf Dal Beis, which is a quote from the Mishnah, Hayula Mo Stumim Yipul Nadava. If he had money that was unspecified, he set it aside. He said he's a Nazir, and he says, "This is for my karbanos." He set aside $1,000 to buy karbanos. So, and then the woman set it aside. She's a Nazira, and then the husband was made for her Nazirus. So, what do you do with the money? So, Yipul and Nadava, the money is used to bring karbanos that are olas on Ketam Mizbeach. They use for dessert in the Mizbeach. When the Mizbeach is it's empty. There's no karbanos on the Mizbeach, so you bring karbanos ola. So the Gemara asked in top of Chufay Manal, right? When you set aside karbanos for the end of your Nazirus, there's three karbanos: there's a karban chatas, shlamim, and ola. Even though I said yesterday, it was clear from one of the brises that when you set aside money in general, it could all be used for the shlamim, right? And that's not a problem because the shlamim is not kachim kachim. That was only talking about a case. I realized because I thought it was talking about all cases, but now I'm looking back. It was only one brisa that it says Hamafresh Mos the Naziruso. I mean, when he said Harini Nazir, and these are the money. But if he says I'm a Nazir, he says I'm a Nazir, and this is the money for my Nazirus. So then that money is unspecified. It could all be used technically for the karban shlamim. However, if he says Harini Nazir, and these are my money for the karbanos, so we assume he meant all three karbanos. That's the first question over here. But Dmei chatas are mixed with them, and Dmei chatas, right, as opposed to a karban ola or karban shlamim, which technically could be brought even though there's no kapara needed. We'll talk more about this in Yom Ben Sion. What exactly is every karban accomplishing? What is a karban ola accomplishing? What is a karban shlamim accomplishing? And what is a karban chatas and asham accomplishing? So Dmei chatas generally have to need kapara. That's exactly what a karban chatas is. You did a chet, you did a sin. It atones for you. That's a karban chatas. So the person, as far as her nazirus is mufar, it's weakened or it's nullified. So there's no need for kapara anymore. And what are you going to do? I'm Rabbi Yochanan halachahi. So halachahi that if the halacha Moshe B'Sinai, only in this case, when you have a nazirus and you set aside money, unspecified money for your nazirus, only in that case the money could be used for an adav, even though presumably there's money of a chatas mixed in there. Rish Lakish Amar gives a different answer. This is a pasuk in Vayikra. It connects Nadarim to Nadavos. Nadarim are obligations. Nadavos are free will offerings. Torah Amra, most are neder yehela nadava. Right? When she said her this money, it was for Nazirus, which was a neder. Right? Whatever's left over from that, because now there's hafaras in the Nazirus. Yehela nadava. It should be for the nadava, and therefore it could be used for nadava. It's a gderes hakasa, even though normally it shouldn't apply. Over here it does apply. The Gemara is Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan Damar halacha ben Nazir, which we see by Nazir. No, that's why Dafka. The Mishnah says only in this case by when the money is unspecified. He didn't say here's $300 for a shlam, $300 for an ola, $400 for a chatas, because that halacha Mishnah seen. It only said where it said. Right? When she sets aside a specific amount for the shlam, ola, and chatas, also she set aside $400 for the chata, so it's considered an adava. So it's mosar, it's not needed anymore. It's superfluous because the nazirus was batel, was nullified, it was annulled. So therefore, also in that case, the money should be used for an adava. I'm a rava, and for Russian lamatzis hamas, you can't. Even Rish Lakish would agree with Russian. You can't say this. Kar paska tanan b'Rishmal. Tanan b'Rishmal told you, rakat shecha, or in Chor Brisa here, rakat shecha sheyulachav and the recha b'vladei. This is a pasuk that is in Dvarim. It's kind of a cryptic pasuk, basically saying that the kachim and the darim, the karbanos that you bring, should come to the Beis Hamikdash. What is the pasuk talking about, right? The Torah is talking about something unique, talking about if you're makdish an animal and then the animal becomes pregnant, it has a child. Or you matish an animal and you exchange it for a different animal. We know halachas tmura, right? We'll learn in Masechas Tmura one day that whatever you exchange for the tmura, it becomes kadosh, and the thing that you try to transfer to kedusha retains its kedusha. What should you do with these things? Tisa obasa alamakom. The pasuk continues. you should bring them and come al makom shirivka Hashem to the place that Hashem chose, which is the base of Mechira. Shachli yalam the base of Mechira. You might think you should bring them out to the base of Mechira, even have mayim and mazon, and not give them water and food, so they should die. Bishul shamusu should die, because we're going to learn that a korban chatas, right, dies if it's no longer needed for korban. The next pasuk says you should do your olah, korban olah, basar v'dam. Lo malacha, kiderech shadanog ba'olah, nog b'tzmurasa. Kiderech shadanog b'shlamim, nog b'vladayim. Just like you act in olah, right, also with its tzmura, if you try to transfer the kedusha through its tzmura, also the way you're with a regular shlamim, that's going to fulfill your obligation of the shlamim. Also, the children of shlamim, you also bring them as karbanos. So that's what the halacha teaches you, that if you're makish korban olah or korban shlamim, if you have a tmura or they give birth to a child, you're also makish on this beach. You might think the same halachas apply to a chatas and asham, right? I think vlad chatas, it does not mean to exclude a vlad asham, and tmuras asham does not mean to exclude a tmuras chatas. It's just examples, like we saw by Ola and Shlamim. So you might think the same halachas apply to a korban chatas and korban asham, which are generally brought for sins, right? As opposed to Ola and Shlamim, we'll talk more in Iyad Ben Tzin what the purpose of korban Ola and Shlamim is. But chatas and asham are generally brought for sin. The chatas for sure. You know, Vera B'Shogi that normally is chayav kares. And asham, the common case of asham tolo is where you're not sure if you did a thing that's chayav a korban chatas. Talmud Loma rak. Therefore it says rak. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel says, by a chatas and asham, you have an extra, superfluous chatas and asham because they had a child, or you exchange it for something else. You can't bring that as a korban. That's rock. So therefore, once we have Rabbi Shmuel, so that what are we going to do with that drasha? So obviously that's talking about a case where you specify the money for a chatas. And once you specify the money for a chatas, you can't use that anymore for an adava. Rabbi Akiva Omer, the Brisa continues, Einot zarach, you don't need the word rock. Hari Omer asham hu. Pasuk by korban asham says asham who, it is an asham. Who is an extra word? But avyaso yehei, an asham should be as it is, meaning only the korban asham. If it has a child asham, or it's tmura, you exchange it for a different animal, that does not have the korban, the kedusha of an asham, to be makar on his beach. So those are the two opinions, Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. Katani. So now the Gemara analyzes this brayso. You might think that when you have an olah and shlamim, right, and they had a child, or you exchange it for another animal, you might bring them out to base of mikdash and let them die, right? You should bring them as an olah. Amai, the Gemara says, "Havlad chatas hu degmir misa." We have halachah mishpsinai. The Gemara knows, right? Only the child of a chatas, makdish something as korban chatas, that has a child. There, you let it die, right? You refrain from giving it food and water, so it should die. You love kra. If it wasn't the pasuk, hava. So it's only by a korban chatas, but an olah and a shlamim were not like a chatas. They have different characteristics than a chatas, so they're not brought for a sin, for kapara necessarily. So therefore, they shouldn't die. Of course, they should be brought as a korban. Why do you need the pasuk to tell you that? The Gemara says, "You love kra." If we didn't have the pasuk, I mean, vlad chatas b'chol makom. I would think vlad chatas you let die. If the chatas is a child, you let that child die at any place. However, when it comes to vladim of olah and shlamim, you also let them die, but you bring them up to the base of bechir. Like the pasuk says, bring the base of bechir, let them die there. Kamash malan, delo. Therefore, the halakha is no. Not only do you bring them up to the base of mikdash, you're also makdiv him as a korban. Obviously, or the olah and shlamim, the child is not for your chiyuv, but you're still makdiv them as an adava. Kasani. So the Gemara continues to analyze this brayso. Yachal af vlad chatas tmura as asham ken. You might think the same halacha applies to the child or the tmura of a chatas or asham. Talmud lama rak. Rabbi Shmuel said rak. It says rak to exclude them. Lama likra. The Gemara says, why don't you pasuk? Kelchasag mirla. We have a halacha l'mishusina. This is found all over Shas, especially in Seder Kachim. Vlad chatas l'misa azo. Right? If you have the child of a chatas, you're makdish something to become a chatas, and it becomes pregnant and it gives birth to an animal, to a child, it goes l'misa. You let it die. Hakanami. The Gemara says it's true. The kral asham with us. So the Gemara is talking about a korban asham. Korban asham, that also you can't bring as a korban. Because in asham, the halacha machine, right, if it has a child, you do not let it die. The Gemara says, asham nami hilchos hagmira. We have a halacha machine which is clear about a korban asham in this case. Kol shilu v'chatas meis. Anytime a chatas die, you let it die. But asham roeh. Korban asham is similar to a chatas. You don't let it die, but you let it graze until it gets a mum, until it gets a blemish, a mum kavua. And then you redeem it. And once you redeem it, it loses, right? It's called Tulei HaMukdashim. It's ruined. It's no longer the kedusha leaves from it. There's still certain halachas you have to be knowing. You can't do giza v'avoda. You can't work it, and you can't shear its wool. However, it's not. It loses its kedusha. You could eat it, and generally Yisrael could eat it. It's not no longer hektish. So I know from Halacha Mashina what the halachas. Why I need a pasuk to tell me that? So there's Ella ime hilchasa. It was just Halacha Mashina. Have amina hilchasa. That's the Halacha Mashina. V'ikrive lo lechayev ala. The Halacha Mashina is the chatas. The vlad chatas should die, and the vlad asham or the tmuras asham should go to graze, and it should get a mum. You podeh, you redeem it. However, if I didn't do that in the chatas, the vlad chatas or vlad asham, I was makar in the zbeach. Lo lechayev ala. I shouldn't be chayev. I shouldn't have done. Didn't do anything wrong. With the evid, it's a kosher korban. V'lo klum. It didn't do anything wrong. Kamash man kara. Therefore, you need a pasuk. The makar like koyim aleh be'aseh. The pasuk says, "This is what you should do." It says you should do by ola and shlamim to be makriv the vlad ola and the vlad shlamim to exclude the vlad chatas and asham that you shouldn't be makriv, right? Lav bam chal. The words rock, right? We rock going to Rishmal. Rock tell you the chatas and asham. You don't do that. So therefore, you violate an essay, and because you violate an essay, you did something wrong. So therefore, the evid, the korban is not kosher. Akiva Omer, Eno Sarech, Harei Omer, Asham Hu, Bevyaski Hey, or Bekiva concludes the Brisa. You don't need it from the word rock. Asham Hu, the word Hu tells me that the Asham has only the korban Asham. The Tamura or the Vlad is not treated like that. Lama Likra, why didn't the Apostle according to Rekiva? Gemara Gemirin Law, we have Halacha Melishina, Kol Chatas Mesa Asham Roa. Just like we said before, right? And the Chatas of Vlad Chatas is sent to die, and Asham is sent to graze until he gets a mum, and then you're poded. And where's Hakinami? The Gemara concedes you're right. To teach you the teaching of Rav, the Amar of Hunam Rav, Asham Shanita Guriya V'Shachtu L'Shem Ola. You have a korban Asham that, right, is not fit to be a korban Asham, the Vlad of an Asham, the Tvur of an Asham. And you let it start grazing, you put it in the field, it didn't get a mum yet. And then before it got a mum, V'Shachtu L'Shem Ola, then you took it out of the field, before it got a mum kavu, and you shafted it for an Ola, kosher. Rav says it's kosher. Time of the nitach, because you sent it out to graze already, it's kosher. Halo nitach lo. However, if you didn't let it graze, it's not kosher. But yeah, but I'm a krahu. Hey, that's what the pasuk Hu teaches me, that if you're makriv the asham before, right, you let it graze, it's also you violated an essay Hu, and because you violated an essay, it's a pasuk korban. That's where we're going to conclude today's shir. It's a little different, Asham and Achatas. I'll explain this more in Ian with Ben Sion. There's an Achatas and Asham, because Achatas, right, if you're makar of it anytime after it has a child or a Tmura, it's not a good korban. Asham, we see from Rav that once you let it graze, even though it didn't get a mum yet, nonetheless, you could be makar of it as an Ola. It would be kosher by the Evid. And these two korbanos stand in very contradistinction to Ola and Shlamim, where in Ola and Shlamim, if they have a child or they're Tmura, you're makar them as an Dava on the Mizbeach. We'll talk about the essence of korban, the fundamental share about the essence really for Kachim, the essence of korban Ola or korban Shlamim, what they're for, Chatas and Asham. We'll talk more about that Ian Ben Sion coming up next.